Hello everyone and welcome to a new banner review. This one is pretty long overdue, but that's kind of because I ended up doing the content of everything around the banner before the banner itself. Sorry about this. I typically do not do this, but I kind of promised I was going to do the GHB tier list update, and therefore that was what I did first. And yeah. At least after this, the only video I've not done would be the legendary version, and I'll probably not touch P5 and P5R because I've been streaming that on a different Twitch channel than I typically use. Until I'm actually done with the video. Once I'm done with the video, I guess I'll move back to P5R. But yeah, with that said, let's move about the banner. As per usual, I'm going from worst to best, so yeah. Starting with Merrick. That said, while Merrick is the worst, I do think he's only barely worse than Marth, because Marth just has a lot of versatility. Merrick is, how can I put this? He can do one thing, actually no, two things, but that's kind of really it. At least I guess I already kind of caught on with the whole wind sweep and, you know, no follow-up interaction. You can shut down your own wind sweep, which allows you to still double while, you know, preventing the enemy from doing follow-up, which makes him very good at dealing with, well, legendary Crom. As long as he's the first one to initiate, he typically will have enough speed, and because he has enough speed, he'll typically kill Crom. Because of Righteous Wind, because of the fact that he gets an extra 5 attack and speed, so Sparrow gets another 6 attack, so you can kind of understand where this is going. You end up with a good chunk of attack, and Windsweep shuts down Crom completely, so he doesn't get to hit back. So, you know, Base Kit is fantastic as a counter about Crom, but as far as a long-term use, or how can I put this? As far as a unit goes, he's very one note. Let's go in comparison so you can kind of see what I mean. So, yeah, these are the main comparison. There's also Legendary Silica, but Legendary Silica is just so much better offensively, it's kind of pointless for me to showcase her. Or rather, there's a good point, but she's also more expensive, which kind of renders the point a bit useless, because Merrick may... Actually, no, he's going to be seasonal, so stuck to 4-man banners, but that's still better than legendary banners. So, yeah. As you can see, though, one of the main things you can really take away from this is that Lewin ends up having more attack than Merrick for AoEs. He also gets to have an extra follow-up immediately, which makes him a lot more consistent overall with AoEs. He's going to do a bit better with AoEs themselves, and in combat he does worse if Merrick gets to get 2 hits in without dying. If he does not get to get 2 hits in with AoEs, of course, Lewin is just typically better, because Lewin can just get 2 hits in, and 2 hits is just better than just 1, even if that 1 has 5 more attack, or 4 more attack, I guess, in this case. So I do have a set, or actually 2 sets with AoEs, but while I do have 2 sets with AoEs, well, you can kind of tell that I do think Lewin is overall better, but at the same time you can just see this as, this is another option Merrick has. As far as Trazir is concerned, Trazir also has Killing Intent, but Killing Intent is a bit of an odd skill. The requirement is for your enemy to not be at full HP, which is awkward, and the other one is to have a penalty on them, which kind of makes sense because she is, of course, a AR unit. AR defense unit, which typically you have panic, you have basically panic towers, shrines, you have a lot of ways to inflict debuffs on your enemies. So, you know, as a result, Killing Intent works there, but if you're talking about a different mode, Killing Intent can be a dead slot. And as far as the weapon is concerned, which is still decent, first off, the offense does not get better than Merrick. And 2, it debuffs one of your party members. It's good to have a bit more bulk, but that's about it. As far as Deirdre is concerned, Deirdre ends up getting... Well, if you're going with Fury 4, which you should with this because it makes the weapon more consistent, you get an extra 7 across the board. Now, Merrick will typically have more attack and more speed, but Deirdre is typically able to hit 50 speed with this. And not to mention, at that point, you know, you can have Sturdy Blow on top of Divine Naga and Fury, and you are basically looking at 39 defense with a buff, which is very good at basically tanking hits, while also having a good amount of attack and speed. As far as attack is concerned, you basically hit 66 attack, as well as 50 speed. So you can kind of imagine. And Deirdre is a lot cheaper in general. This is kind of the one thing that really is worth mentioning. She's on weekly banners. Weekly banners are about twice as easy to summon the unit you want on. So Deirdre is typically about 1,000 orbs, give or take, to get the plus 10. Whereas Merrick would be about twice that, which is not exactly ideal. 4-man banners are just very brutal in general, and outside of legendary banners, there's not really anything worse than 4-man banners as far as getting the unit you want. Legendary banners are good value if you care about every unit on the banner, but that's not typically the case. So, yeah. And now that they can't even be on you know, legendary banners anymore, since now they are on those weird 8-man banner with double rate, that's basically just a 4-man banner in disguise. Yeah, kind of a shame, honestly, because at least when you were going for legendaries, when you were going for a seasonal on legendaries, you always had a legendary per color on top of like the seasonal you wanted. So more often than not, you were at least getting 2 out of 3 good units. But now you don't really get this. So it's basically complete random if you're going to get a good green or not, which is kind of a shame. So, yeah. Moving on to Merrick's build number 1. Also, I should mention, I do not have a wind sweep set here, or water sweep for that matter. Base kit is typically what you'll be running for this, so kind of pointless for me to really mention this, outside of, you know, Time's Pulse as the C skill, because it makes Righteous Wind so much better. Righteous Wind, by the way, is a fairly solid skill, and Time's Pulse, the main reason why you want this on Merrick is effectively to just proc it, get hit, proc it again. It does not double the amount of healing you get, you still only heal for 10, but if you need to get 2 hits in, that's a good option. Also, another thing worth mentioning is Attack Death Push works really good with Righteous Wind, because you'll basically, instead of taking 5 damage, you'll just heal for 5 at the end of every fight. If you think that Righteous Wind is not enough, you can still decide to just run Mystic Boost. Not exactly what I would suggest personally, but, you know, because that way you would basically heal for 11 every fight. But I think he's already fairly solid. So here you run Death Blow, purely because Attack Death Push already pushes your defense to 38. Sturdy Blow is also an option if you prefer that. It's really up to you. With this set, you basically hit 71 attack, no, 76 attack, no, 79 attack. 58, 63 because of the weapon, 70 because Attack Death Push, 73 because low attack res, 79 because Death Blow. So, yeah, 79 attack. No Blade Tome, no nothing, very easy to set up. And, yeah. Not to mention, despite all of this, you basically get to proc specials. 51 speed, so 56 because of the weapon. You're basically looking at 16 points of damage, which is fairly solid overall. this is mostly being a thing you can do because of the cooldown -1 in the weapon. It's also effective against flyers. I guess that's worth mentioning. The requirement for the weapon to work is to just have a buff on you. Not exactly a difficult trigger to pull off, so there's that to mention. As for the set on the right, as you can see, I use 30 impact with 30 blow, which pushes your bulk to 45 defense and 35 res. Keep in mind, whenever that becomes a thing, Mirror Strike is completely better. But yeah, 45-35 with the lull, that's 48-38. If you think defense might be more effective for you, that's still a good option. If not, then yeah. You can't really make your stat line even unless, you know, Mirror Strike becomes a seal, because then you can basically make it 44-42, which is pretty solid. I still don't understand why why Mirror Strike is still not a seal for some reason, but well, here we are. But yeah, this is still fairly solid overall. Moving on to build 2, which is the AoE build. No surprise there. Essentially 70 attack. Keep in mind, like I said, Forseti Boy over there was basically able to do this better. Not by a whole lot, but he is. Purely because of the fact that he can hit twice after combat. Or rather, after the AoE itself. You're basically looking at 79 attack in combat, which is still pretty decent. But, yeah. It's still overall worse than what Lewin can offer, I feel like. Especially since Lewin sets up very easily. Though you do need Flashing Blade for Lewin, which, you know, actually means that Merrick does end up with a bit more attack. The fact that you get to hit twice in a row, typically, is just a bit more consistent. Now, if you wonder why I said that Merrick is very limiting, it's purely because of this skill right here, Righteous Wind. Righteous Wind's main problem is the fact that he keeps healing him, so Raisins are out of the equation. And because his skill is basically one cooldown, and switching to, say, Bonfire is kind of stupid, or Draconic Aura for that matter, because it does not give you that much more damage, if at all, then you don't need Special Spiral. You are ranged, so skills like Wrath are out of the question. Because of the heal, you can't use Brazens effectively. Like, in general, Merrick kinda is very one-note because he can't really stray too far from what he already does. Either AoE, or you want to, like, beef up his defenses with Time's Pulse and just chuck Righteous Wind constantly. Which is not very ideal, and his bulk is kind of too not great to go for a close counter set that Righteous Wind would keep restoring your HP with. So that's kind of the main problem I have with Merrick. Still, he is a fantastic one-off unit if you want to have something going on for, say, AA, dealing with, you know, Legendary Crom. Though keep in mind, he cannot bait him, so Crom can still destroy him, basically. Still, that's kind of par for the course with Crom. Moving on to Marth now. So yeah, Marth is really good, though Rapier is really bad, as usual. It's basically a vintage weapon with effectiveness against armored and cavalry, which, yeah, cavalry. Ooh, that's gonna be helpful in, like, no mode ever, except maybe AR, so you can, like, vantage that Reinhardt and hopefully one-shot him. It's not very amazing, I'm gonna be completely honest. Even with Special Spiral, so you can just keep chucking a hero's blood, it's not very amazing overall. It basically works against only the thing he's effective against, and if they're not armored unit, because armored units typically have so much defense, it can actually just work against you. If the armored unit is blue, give up. If the armored unit is red, can be shaky. Like, Zelgus ends up with like over 50 health and like over 40 defense very easily. Which, you know, Marth can reach, but it's already shaky there, is what I'm trying to get at. As for blue, just don't even try. Blue units will typically be able to just ignore Vantage and smash into you, killing you almost instantly. If you are already in Vantage range, which means you have already less than full HP, you know. Or, you know, you're not in Vantage range already, so typically Bullfighter will just hit, get hit, proc, you're dead, bye. It's not very amazing. Armor killers in generals are good, but at the same time, this is an enemy phase armor killer mostly because of Vantage. It's gonna be good for keeping certain units in check like Winter Sophist, but the second you go in like more general terms, it's not very amazing. Which is why you typically will get rid of the weapon. Because the main thing that makes him so good is, one, he basically has the Iris stat line, but like redone. aka basically Larsa, but again. But he also gets a 2 cooldown special. So, speaking of comparison, I should have put Ragnalastra and Hero's Blood here. That's my bad. I kind of didn't because this was the first comparison I've made for the banner, and I wasn't decided to just add the skills that make the units unique all together. As you can see, if you compare him to Larsa though, very, very, very similar stat line. The only reason why Marth ends up having just better stats, like ties in HP, ties in attack, ties in speed, better def, better res, is because his weapon gives him 3 speed. So, you know, whereas Larsa gets no stats, but she gets cooldown -1, which is infinitely better. That said, that's only if you would look at the, you know, stat at face value. Larsa gets 4 across the board if she has more speed than the enemy, and or if the enemy is at full HP, which is extremely easy to fulfill. Larsa can also use Wrath effectively just as well as Marth if Marth uses a, you know, Slaying Edge. Which, you know, that's kind of the main thing. She has a pref with Slaying. Marth does not have a Slaying pref. That said, Marth is also a 4-star focus, so the best comparison would be really Soleil. And if you compare him to Soleil, bruh, it's just better overall. You can go Res Plus also, and you'll basically have better def, better res, better speed, or actually slightly worse speed if you go off of the weapon. But again, that's mostly because of refines. I guess if you go Attack Plus with Slaying Edge, and refine it to res, you end up having more def, more res, a bit less speed, and you know, about the same attack. Which, to be fair, Soleil is still a fantastic unit, but even if you were to just take this as, oh, Soleil has slightly better stats, which he does not really, then you run into the whole thing where Marth also has Hero's Blood. Hero's Blood is really the main thing that keeps him afloat, I feel like. And will keep him as a fairly solid unit overall for a long time. Not to mention, 4-star focus are very easy to merge. I think I spent 420 or something orbs. And my Marth is +9. Yeah, like I said, 4-star focus are no joke. I think it's about 10% chance of getting the focus 4-star, basically. I mean, I'm not complaining. I also grabbed an Idun, a Larsa, and like Merrick, as well as 2 Sida along the way, which, you know, it's when you're only focusing on a 4-star focus, getting any 5-star on top of it is just like, oh, cool, extra stuff, you know? So it doesn't feel as bad as when you're going for a 5-star, and the game is just like, Oh, you wanted a 5-star focus? Well, here's a 5-star unfocus and your pity rate is down the drain. Congratulations! You know, that kind of stuff. That's really frustrating. But it's not really that way with Marth. If you don't get a 5-star Marth, cool, I don't care. 4-star Marth still is like 10% chance anyway. So, it's just overall a lot less infuriating. But yeah, if you compare Marth to Larce kind of just does more damage. The 4 across the board that Hero's Blood give is not all that. It can be helpful here or there, but it's really not a priority. Not to mention, Larce also negates buffs, which is extremely helpful in just about every mode. So, yeah, in general, Larce is overall better, I'd say. But Larce is a 5-star exclusive, so, you know. Not to mention, Larce is probably the best infantry sword unit of this game right now. So, yeah. Kind of a given that Marth is not going to be even comparable to her. But the second you look away from like the absolute top tier sword infantry, is basically the best you can get. He's the best budget option you get, if anything. So let's move on to builds. So this is ideally what I'd run. Set on the right, effectively is just I have 67 attack, 47 speed, 46 defense, and 47 res. And you basically hit me, I proc Hero's Blood, which is basically going to give you 14 damage. So effectively, let's just say you have about 81 attack, basically. 81 attack is not bad. But you know what's the best about this? The set on the left. This is a more arena-focused set, and is very similar to the Ira build, as I like to call it. You can also run Brazens as the A skill instead of Distant Counter if you feel like you want to have even more power, but this strips you away from dealing with any mages. Effectively, what this does is that you have 46 def and 47 res while you are in Wrath range. And the best part about this is it makes you very solid overall, in the sense that you can actually do consistently just, you know, proc Hero's Blood, get hit, proc it again. Ira does the same thing with Slaying Edge and Ragnar Astra, and that's basically what made her so good back when she was first released. She is still a very solid unit too. But there's clear competition now with Larce, effectively. So, yeah. Here you basically can just, you know, proc that 67 attack plus 14 damage from Hero's Blood, get hit, proc it again. Or actually, because of Wrath, it's 24 damage. I think you can kind of get the idea. Even if, say, you're fighting someone with 50 defense with this, you still do like 41 times 2, basically. Unless it's blue, and if it's blue, then your 67 drops down to 54. Let's say they have 50 defense, so you do 4 plus 24 from Wrath. That's 28 damage. You get hit, probably don't get to die because you're that bulky. And proc again, probably killing them because at that point you're doing 56 damage. This is on a 50 defense blue unit. I want you to realize how stupid this sounds. But yeah, that's kind of the main thing that also made Ira really broken. But now Marth has a much stronger stat line. And while he does not exactly have a breath to really, you know, facilitate this, he's also a 4-star exclusive, so... Or 4-star exclusive. 4-star focus, sorry. Which is, you know, just a lot easier to build overall. If you want to compare cost between Marth and Ira, Ira is costing about twice what he cost to get all the copies of the +10. I am not joking. This is actually real. Marth will cost you about 500-600 orbs. Ira will cost you about 1,000-1,100 orbs. because of the weekly banner. Weekly banner have amazing rate, but 4-star focus have even better rate. That's just kind of a fact. Not to mention, he scores as a 175 BST unit because he has 172 BST, so plus 3 because of the first merge. You score basically the same as Gen 2 armored units. Yes, that's right, a Gen 2 armored unit. Or even Gen 3, because Gen 3 and Gen 2 are the same. For some fucking reason. But yeah, so you end up having a lot of BST. So you score better than Ira by 2 BST bins, and you still have a 500 SP special, which, you know, opens a lot of ways for you to really lay in the hurt, which is really good for him. But yeah, those are the first sets, and probably should be the main sets people should be going for. Personally, I do think it's the more consistent ones, but that's just me. Like I said, you can run double brazen if you feel like you're not going to deal with ranged units. Double brazen will basically allow you to just ram through units like Brave Hector pretty easily, despite the fact that you have a color disadvantage. Ira is capable of doing the same thing, so I don't see why Marth would not when he has literally just better stats all around. But yeah. Now that I think about it, I should probably have put Ira in the comparison, shouldn't I? Well, oops. Moving on to the second page of build. Carrot Cudgel and Herd's Blade. Now, Carrot Cudgel is actually extremely solid for him. And if the goal is really to just, you know, run No See Disrupt, I would suggest you to run this over the first set I showed, or Rapier. Because then with No See Disrupt, you would still have 47 defense, 48 res, be immune to death and attack debuff, which is actually kind of huge. Enemy cannot buff attack or defense. Or actually, no, because you'd have No See Disrupt. So you'd basically be looking at, with Join Drive Attack, and this is without any support, like, you know, Mel Corin, for example, or anything of the sort. You are already at 73 attack, 47 speed, as well as 47 defense and 48 res. If you have something like Corin to help you, boy oh boy, you're basically looking at 78 attack, 52 speed, 52 defense, and 53 res. Yes, when your lowest stat is basically 52, you can kind of imagine why that's good. I'm counting +5 across the board because you're typically going to be like within 2 space but not adjacent. So you have the support bonus on top of the refine itself. So 5 across the board. Yeah, this is overall kind of insane. You can also run Attack Smoke, but I do not suggest it because you'll typically be baiting unit away from the main force. So, meaning that Attack Smoke will basically proc on nobody. So, there's that. Still, overall, Marth is an insane unit, and that's definitely a set I'm going to be building myself for. I'm definitely going to be building this set. If I can finally get Res Plus. I got 10 copies of Marth and not a single one of them is Res Plus. Screw me, right? And the set on the right is very similar, but it's mostly if you want to have even more attack. Although I think there's 4 attack here that should not be here. Probably because of the whole pair up stats, which is just right after the actual buffs, so I might have went a bit further with it and had a +4 buff by accident as a result. So take it as 60 attack. So low attack def will push that to 63, attack res bond to 68, Heart's Blade to 71. Actually, yeah, it's mostly so your speed is more consistent actually. So 71 attack, 50 speed, pretty decent overall. Also, 52 defense, as well as 51 res. So yeah, you know, there's that. I kind of also forgot the 3 attack and defense that you get from, or 3 attack def res from low attack def when I was talking about the stat for Marth, because I was using No See Disrupt in that example. Meaning, if you have no attack def, yeah, it's even more tanky at that point. So yeah, overall very solid builds, and then you have Rapier, yay. As I said, Special Spiral with Hero's Blade works really well. With Joint Drive attack as well as Fierce Stance basically gives you an extra 10 attack, which means you're basically sitting on 75 attack. It's not perfect, it really isn't, because the second you're dealing with a blue it goes down to 60, so you have 90 attack effectively against armored blue units, which is typically not going to be enough to kill. So do keep that in mind. If you're dealing with a red or a green, if you are running something like this, you're typically going to be just fine. Special Spiral can close out some kills against blues, but do calculate it before you do it every time, because it's not consistent whatsoever otherwise. As for the set on the right, this is typically a set you'll be running with Brave Lucina. That will allow you to have Hero's Blood hitting for 24 damage, and your bulk is still 46 defense, 45 res. Close Call is also a good option with this, because you're basically always getting yourself hit. So, might as well lower the damage you're about to get. Close Call is also a decent option for him in general, though keep in mind if you're going to use this for other options, if you're using him in, say, AR, use him on Light Season with Peony, because Peony can give him 4 speed effectively, on top of an extra 3 speed because of the weapon, which makes Close Call a lot more consistent. Keep in mind also Brave Lucina can run multiple drive speed to make this more consistent, though personally if you're using Brave Lucina and Peony, I would say just run Drive Def, Drive Res. It's typically going to serve you better, with 52 defense, 51 res, while also being able to proc for good amounts of damage overall. So yeah, that's about all I had to say. The Rapier set is really mostly as an obligatory thing, because I know a lot of people are using this, but personally I do not really suggest running this. The second you don't have effective damage against the thing you're dealing with, you're typically going to be missing the kill, and you're kind of useless then. That's kind of the problem really in general with Marth, at least, you know, if you're going to go for Rapier. Next up, Sida. Yes, I do not think Sida is the strongest unit of the banner. Woo! Because our weapon, while extremely solid, is still only really good against sword, lance, axe, bow, colorless bows, I should say, and armored units. Now, this is a good chunk of unit, right? It's about a good 40% of the game, and if you're talking about like the relevant units, as far as arena is concerned, it's more like 80-90% of the unit you're going to come across. Maybe a bit less actually. Maybe like 70-80 would be more correct. If you're talking about AR though, this weapon is not very dangerous. Because not a whole lot of units are used that are these types of units. Though actually, to some extent there are some that are, but typically they are Vantage Tank, like Levitain, Legendary Leaf, you know, units like these. In which case the effective damage does nothing, because you're just going to proc Vantage of your own, kill her off, and that's that. Belief in Love will not do anything against you. Feather Sword will not do anything against you, because you just proc Vantage. And that's kind of one of the weirdest thing about Sida. Yeah, she is good against a good chunk of unit. If you're dealing with mages, your res is not good enough and you're typically just going to die. And if you're looking for, like, say, bow units like Legendary Leaf, typically those are just getting hurt. So Vantage will screw you over. Unless you run Hardy Bearing, which then kills your own weapon, which is not exactly amazing, is it? That is not to say she's a bad unit. I do think she's a really good unit at what she does, and she can work outside of it, which is something we'll touch on a bit later. It gives you a lot more options overall. Still, Feather Sword is, you know, it's... I don't want to say it's niche because it really isn't, but it can be a bit more situational than you'd like. It really depends on what you're fighting or what mode you're doing. Like I said, in Arena, she's gonna be amazing. Outside Arena, it's a bit more shaky. And that's kind of why I think Sita is worse than Pala, because Pala is good in every map. It's the only condition you have with Pala is your own team, which is easy to work with. Whereas Sita here is not really limited by teams, but she's limited by what she's facing. Belief in Love is really good also because it relies on the enemy being at full HP or not, or full HP or initiating on you, which sounds kind of awful in some cases, but it really isn't, because you can actually use this with any other weapon, and there's a certain weapon that can really abuse this. It's basically Pegasus Flight without any rest check, which is extremely helpful for her. So, let's move on to comparison. So, the main reason why I brought those two comparisons is just generalized use, right? Elincia is overall better than Sita in general use, because Brave Weapon is good against everything, whereas Feather Sword is not good against everything. That said, if you look at the bulk, she has better bulk overall than the other two here. And the other two here are basically like some of the best bulk, or they have some of the best bulk in terms of units. I guess you can also bring up the fact that Guntra exists, New Year Guntra. I mean, if you've seen what mine does, I think you can kind of see why I'm pointing this out. 50 defense and res is fun, to say the least. But Sita can do something very similar, potentially even better. Because, first off, speed is not a problem with Sita. She has literally too much speed. So, you know, 52 speed at the lowest is very doable. On the other hand, she also has better bulk than New Year Guntra, sort of. And having more res like this is also kind of helpful to just prevent ploys and so on. As for the attack is actually tied with Guntra, so she's overall better than New Year Guntra. So, there's that. Especially since New Year Guntra tends to go away from her weapon. Ikami is a good weapon, yes, but it's more supportive rather than making the unit good. Typically, you'll be running Kara Cudgel, Heart's Blade, stuff like this on New Year Guntra. Yeah, Elincia has a midi, which is only 7 less attack behind Sita, which is really not that far behind. I actually forgot to put the refine. I forgot Amity had a refine, to be completely honest with you. So actually the difference is 3 might, which is even less. And as far as speed is concerned, you don't even need to care too much about that because of the refine. You end up with 42 speed. So with buff, you end up with 48 speed, which is fairly consistent. Typically, what you're not going to quad, you're going to kill in 2 hits. That's kind of the main thing to keep in mind when it comes down to Elincia. Because you're basically looking at 62 attack. Especially since, you know the worst part about Elincia, she might actually get a Resplendent at one point. The second she gets that, well, you had Flowers, you had Resplendent, you hit 40 res with attack plus. The reason why I point this out is Pegasus Flight. See, the main thing Sita has here is Belief in Love. Belief in Love is basically offering her an extra 5 attack, def, and res. So, you know, that's already extremely helpful, but Elincia could be actually able to run it. Or Pegasus Flight. She could run Pegasus Flight, which basically is Belief in Love. So, Yeah, especially once she gets a Resplendent, that's going to open so many doors for her. Because most of the unit with a lot of res that would stop Pegasus fight, that have enough res and defense, are typically green armors, Surtur, and now the new Edelgard that has no goddamn speed. So you can kind of imagine what happens with those. Those still kind of just dies. At least, you know, if you build her right. Especially since you can just run Death Blow, you know, as you do. Because Death Blow plus Amity, and plus a buff, you're basically looking at 68 attack. And even with just 40 res, you typically will proc Pegasus Flight to some extent. At least if Resplendent becomes a thing. Still, overall, the idea is that Elincia is very good against everything. And if you compare Katria to Sida, even with Belief in Love, Sida has less attack overall than Katria. That said, Katria does have a bit less speed, but it's definitely salvageable with just flowers and a buff. So, there's that. Astra Blade also does really help in terms of damage, to some extent. It is true damage, Jay. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It really only applies against blue units, the true damage aspect anyway. Because otherwise it's like, oh, you do 0 damage, it still is 0 damage. You do 10 damage, okay, it's 15 now. And if it's against green, it's literally just... let's say you have 50 attack, the enemy has 40 defense. You'll do 27. Or 25, sorry. So, yeah. Because the combat triangle is not kept in mind when doing the adding. So instead of being like, well, 30, it just is, well, 25. So yeah. But yeah, Sita overall is still really solid. The main thing is really the fact that she can use Kara Cudgel really well. She also has a Death Super Boon, which makes this even better. And yeah, I do think Elincia is overall better if you are talking about overall use, and she also costs half of what Sita costs, so that's still worth mentioning. So yeah, let's talk about build now. So as you can see, yeah, the set on the left is mostly an AA pick. So essentially the idea is if you're dealing with, and also Sturdy Stance would be great for her, if you're dealing with, say, oh, Winter Sophist, she's just going to proc her sword, one-shot her, done, next. Which is pretty helpful. You're basically looking at 71 attack here. 76 with Belief in Love, 80 with Join Drive attack. So, you know, on top of being effective against stuff that actually matters, unlike Marth, she gets extra vantage even at, like, full HP, as long as it's the units that she basically, you know, is effective against. The bulk here with Sturdy Stance, if that ever becomes a thing, would be pretty good in just making her able to take hit from stuff she's not effective against. So, you know, that's still worth mentioning. And that's why Def Plus is also a good option here. The idea with aerobatics is to just be able to support others while also just being able to just jump in. If something is around a general vicinity that she's effective against, she'll typically just jump in and kill it, which is pretty helpful. So this set is definitely a lot better in AR defense, but yeah. As for build number 2, this is typically what I run on Yuya Guntra, so I think most people are probably, you know, familiar with this. With the Distinct Counter set, you're basically looking at, well, 60 attack, 65 attack, 70 attack. So yeah, 70, 52 offensively, while you still have also 49 defense, oh no, 52 defense, 52 res. Wait, 3, 4, oh wait, drive attack. 3, 7, 12, 17. No, so 74 attack. 74 attack, 55 speed. Which is a bit overkill, but you know, details. Also 52 defense and res. So yeah, you can kind of see the idea here. If you're going with Fortress Def Res, which is just to have a bit more bulk, you still end up being fairly, you know, decent offensively speaking, because you're basically still looking at 69 attack. Actually, no, 72 attack. 72 attack, 55 speed. But you're also looking at 58 defense, 58 res. Which, at that point, have fun getting that thing killed. You're basically looking at 60 def and res, more or less. As you do. So yeah, overall fairly solid. This is basically what I run on New Year Guntra, so yeah. It's just that she ends up with more stats because she's a gen further, and you know, her points are more or less spread in a better way. Belief in Love is also very consistent, unlike Pegasus Flight. Though to be fair, I do hit 50 res on Guntra once you use Pegasus Flight, so it's fine. And now for another one, which is the one based on Kara Cudgel. This one can use Attack Plus instead of Def Plus, so if you're one of those people that are on my channel that have already plus 10 her with Attack Plus, there you go. This is an option you can do. She hits 74 attack with this, which is, actually no, 79 attack, which is not bad. 79, 52 offensively, which is overall fairly solid. With Belief in Love and Kara Cudgel, you're basically looking also at, you know, 50 defense, 49 res, so you still have a good amount of bulk, while also having a really good offense. Personally, this is probably the build I would be using the most, because if I would have to step away from Sita, she would still be able to work well. Keep in mind though, if it ever becomes a thing, Sturdy Stance makes this set way better. Because you basically can just step from within 2 space of her, and she still gets the joint drive attack, she still gets Kara Cudgel, and then Attack Def Bond does not require you to be adjacent to her because it would be Sturdy Stance instead. So yeah, this opens a good chunk of possibilities for Sita overall. Moving on to Pala, and boy oh boy, Pala did not disappoint. So, Pala is basically looking like almost a Dragoon at this point, which is kind of weird, really. She has more attack than Minerva for some reason. Her base kit is already kind of amazing. It works really well with her, and this is so nice and such a nice breath of fresh air. Pala has always been the unit that has been decked out, or dicked out rather, when it comes down to the Three Sisters. Est and Katria is a fantastic base version, and then, you know, both of their spring version had prefs. Pala did not have a pref on a spring alt for some reason. Pala's pref is also garbage in her base version, so you can kind of imagine how I feel about this. Finally, she got some justice that she deserves. The base effect basically allows her to always have an extra follow-up as long as there's 3 flyers on the team, regardless of placement or anything of the sort, which is already kind of insane considering. It does not block enemy follow-ups though, so having a speed stat is not bad, so her having 31 speed is still extremely helpful. You can actually work on that and still have enough speed to block doubles while you still double yourself as a result. Not to mention, her attack is disgusting, and the second that she's within the space of 2 flyers, she gets to quad, basically. And considering the monstrous amount of attack she has, you can kind of imagine how disgusting that gets. So, yeah, very good unit. And also, I will not forget this time, because I actually decided to add it here, because I keep forgetting touching upon duo skills. This duo skills is a bit different than most. It can be reused. At the start of odd number turn, if duo skill has already been used, unit can use dual skill again. This is actually extremely helpful for Pala, because what her dual skill does is effectively just do the legendary Azura thing where flyers get more movement. Though I do have an issue with the fact that this skill exists for one reason and one reason alone, which is the fact that Cavs are already underpowered as is, and their main asset is the fact that they have 3 movement. And here comes a unit that just buffed Flyer to 3 movements for just being around there, basically. I feel like that's kind of broken and kind of just shits on Cav even more, which is kind of a shame, but what can you do, I guess. It is definitely one of the better duo skills just because it's reusable, honestly. But yeah, like I said, Gale Force units can really use this, and most of the reason you'd use a Cav is because of Gale Force, so the fact that this ignores terrain because they're flyers kind of just makes them better Cavs overall. But yeah, otherwise, very good skill. So let's talk about comparison, shall we? So, alright. Because of Wind Down Spear, you get to also destroy the enemy's attack and defense by 4, if there's 3 flyers on the team, which means you're looking at 70 attack compared to the rest. You can kind of tell why this is kind of disgusting, but yeah. S is looking at 61 attack with White Wing Spear, and Cordelia is looking at 58. Yeah. That's kinda disgusting. Just kinda. Especially since Est might in fact receive a Resplendent in the future. I kinda hope not, but she could. Which allows her to use Pegasus Flight a lot more consistently. She can already use Pegasus Flight, yeah, more effectively than you'd think. Which, you know, makes her overall better than Cordelia. But outside of that, like, Jesus. Pala is just so much better. Even if you have Pegasus Flight fully active, right? Like, the whole 7 points, you are still behind 2 attack from Pala. And Pala can double the same way as does. The only thing is, Cordelia can be a bit better in the sense that she does not, you know, she does not require to be in a specific team comp to function, which is something Est and Pala has to have. So, there is that. So, effectively, the main thing to take away from this is that Cordelia is basically, can use her everywhere you want. Pala is a bit more restrictive. But Pala also brings so much to the table for a flyer team that it's kind of, you know, it's absolutely worth it to use. 3 movement on flyers, including dancers, is extremely helpful. Especially considering she has also one of the best stat line out there as far as offensive unit is concerned. 39-31 is just absolutely beautiful, and I'm surprised why this type of stat line has not been used nearly as much as it should have. So, moving on to builds. So, build on the left is definitely meant more as a supportive set. I don't understand why she had a double chill skill. By the way, you might not have heard me talk about the chill skill. This is pretty obvious why. If you've been on my channel for a long time, I do not like chill skills. I feel like all the time they're going to debuff the unit that's in the furthest back of the map, which then, oh look, -5 attack speed on that enemy that I can't reach. Oh, hey, the debuff is completely worthless until I get to said unit. Fantastic. I really hate skills that are inconsistent in their helpfulness, I guess. If you get what I mean. And therefore, I don't really like chill skills. Anyway, flyer formation here allows you to just tag to a different unit and just go in. And with Mirror Impact, you're essentially looking at 43 attack, 44 res. The enemy cannot follow up. You have 41 speed, so even if they have quick riposte, which is typically on slow units, they will not get the W. You're also looking at 82 attack. No, 86 attack. This is an 86 attack that can turn into a brave weapon. The reason I don't use Death Blow to push that to 92 attack, which is even more ridiculous, is because even if you get 12 damage from Death Blow, which typically is wrong because you'll typically only get 10 for the encounters that you will struggle with, because obviously you're not going to struggle with blues, obviously you're not going to struggle with red, at least if you quad. What you're going to struggle with is with greens. So your 6 attack becomes 5. And potentially even down to 4. So for those matchup, Moonbow is absolutely better. If you're dealing with a unit with 40 defense that's blue, well, Moonbow is basically giving you 12 damage instead of the 8-10 that Deathblow might give. It's pretty obvious, but, you know, I thought I'd still mention it. If you're dealing with a 60 def blue unit, that probably will lower your damage enough that you might miss the kill. Sort of, at least on lower merges, or if you don't have attack plus. Great, Moonbow is going to be a great help for you. As for the set on the right, this is Gale Force. This is why I run Fortress Def Res on this with attack smoke, because the main thing with Pala is that her attack is too high for Gale Force normally. Like, even here, she still has 70 attack because of her weapon. The enemy loses 4 attack anyway, so, you know. So you effectively have 70 attack for Heavy Blade. This is still very consistent for Heavy Blade. But because of Fortress Def Res, you can actually be more consistent at, you know, taking hits, which is pretty helpful for one. And for two, it just obviously makes you fairly solid overall at just, you know, get hit, proc, or just hit twice in a row and get Gale Force going. While also allowing you to just go all in, slaughter units that are actually dangerous and still have an enemy phase. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention with Wide Down Spear, you're looking at 86 attack, 41 speed, but you're also looking at a decent amount of bulk. You have 47 defense and 48 res here. As for the set on the right, you're basically looking at 53 defense, as well as 47 res. Multi-phase. That's actually kind of disgusting. And you get a follow-up as well, multi-phase. So, you know, it's not like you're lacking in this. The 41 speed is also pretty good at blocking follow-ups from slower units. It's a bit inconsistent though, since most units typically sit around 45 speed. So that makes 41 a bit shaky overall. As far as the second page of builds, this is with Pegasus Flight on the left. Keep in mind, Pegasus Flight is not all that amazing on her, but it can help to just score a kill. This is mostly meant to be used in tandem with Brave Lucina, because, you know, Brave Lucina will be good at making noontime proc. This is effectively just so you can have an enemy phase that can keep healing yourself. Mystic Boost is also an option if you feel like that's more consistent, which is completely fine. So, yeah, overall, Noontime is just to keep her HP high. I just figured that because of Noontime, you'll already heal enough. So Mystic Boost is a bit overkill at that point. But it still is an option. So you're looking at 72 attack. If you have something like Brave Lucina backing you up, because you have Swift Stance, I would strongly recommend going triple or double drive attack. So you have +9 attack, effectively putting you at 81 attack, which makes it more consistent for Noontime to keep your HP high. If you're talking about the set on the right, with Mystic Boost to replace Noontime, and Ignis to replace Pegasus Flight, which is definitely more damage base. For this one, I would run Drive Dev Drive Res on Brave Lucina. Because both of these builds are meant to be used with Brave Lucina, because, you know, 2 cooldown and 4 cooldown. The idea with this is swift stance blocks follow up more consistently, 45 speed being a lot less shaky. And you're also looking at 43 to 41 res. So if you have Brave Lucina, that jumps up to 49, 47, while your attack jumps up to 75. Ignis will typically proc because you'll just get hit back again, and that allows you to proc Ignis. So, yeah. Overall, it's extremely solid. It will just about blow up anything you're going to come across, and it's a more enemy phase focused set. So, yeah. I think that about sums up the entire banner. In conclusion, I do think Merrick is a good one-off for AA. Marth is a fantastic unit to build to +10 if you think you have the orbs for it. And Sita is also a really good AA unit, but she can be used elsewhere because of her bulk. And as far as Paula is concerned, she is an absolute beast when it comes down to being an offense master, more or less. Because she can just hit insane amounts of attack while still being able to chuck specials at you if needed. So yeah. Really good banner overall. I'm actually really glad to see Arcania actually getting, you know, a seasonal banner. This is the first full Arcania banner that we've got. And, you know, I'm actually glad because those are some of the most old games, and the old games, as far as Fire Emblem Heroes is concerned, are typically just mistreated or completely ignored. Looking at Genealogy with its 2 alts. And by 2 alts, I mean really like Dancing Ishtar, which is only there because Reinhardt, and Legendary Julia. Thorikia has like Reinhardt, Leaf, Olwen. Because Reinhardt. It's getting old at this point. But I guess we'll see. Overall, I'm actually quite happy with this banner. It's basically you're happy with whatever you pull. That's the best part about it. It's different from most banners that had a 4-star focus where you're like, oh, the 4-star focus is of this. Ugh. Gross. Or then you had other things like Narshan where you're like, I just want the weapon, dude. But yeah. Pretty happy with the way this turned out. And next up will be the legendary Edelgard banner. I'm gonna try to get that one out quickly, since after all it's the only thing I have to do right now. I'm stuck at my home for another 10 days because apparently we're going to have to wait even longer to go back at school for I believe it's May 11th. So there's that. As you do. Also, yay, birthday today. Can't wait to stay in my home and do nothing. But yeah, with that said, I don't think there's anything else for me to say, so I'll be seeing you all next time. Have a nice one, everyone. See ya.